How's everybody doing? Yahoo! All right. As Philip mentioned, I am Benjamin Jacobs. So I am the Senior Vice President for Services for Mastercard in Canada. I live in Toronto now, but I actually grew up in Alberta. I'm from Edmonton. Go Oilers. Sorry, am I allowed to say it here? Still cheer for them. The only flag I have for a vehicle is my Oilers flag, which I wave proudly in Toronto whenever they make it all the way they need to make it. So, but enough about me. It's a real pleasure to have you guys here. Thank you for taking some time on a Friday afternoon to have some fun and learn some information about what's going on in our economy and from our perspective and also from some of the leaders that we have here. Stampede's an iconic moment. For those of you, let's show of hands, who here is not from Calgary? All right. Okay, look at that. Like a lot of people coming from out of town. How many people are not from Alberta? Wow, look at that. How many are not from Canada? We got a couple. Okay, we do have a few. All right, excellent. Welcome. Welcome, everyone. So it is an iconic moment. I think it's no surprise to anybody in Calgary and Alberta, maybe Canadians as well, that this is an iconic moment for the country. But when people think about Stampede, the first thing they think of is the rodeo typically, right? Like maybe the parties, maybe the atmosphere, the parade this morning, certainly. But it also is a very interesting opportunity to look into how people are spending. And so that's something that we've been analyzing. We look at when we look at how the economy is doing, how consumers are reacting, and especially at this moment in time, we all know as Canadians that we're going through a lot of economic change. A lot of uncertainty has been on our minds, especially for the last 18 months. So it's interesting to look backwards, but also use that to inform us for going forwards as well. Right? So that's what we're going to try to say, and especially right now in this moment, as we go through, the agreements that we have with some of our fellow neighboring partners and things like that we're renegotiating, what's really happening, right? So as we're at this pivotal economic transition, one of the things that we think about is how businesses are really starving for insights and are looking for information on where to invest, how to grow, how to prepare for what comes next. And we believe at Mastercard that starts with data, and that data can provide you insights. So we're proud of our longstanding presence in Canada. We actually have a longstanding presence both in Toronto and Western Canada as well, in Vancouver, and here in Calgary as well, and in Alberta. Our deep commitment to Western Canada, with some of the work that we've been doing within the financial services organizations that we work with locally to help the province unlock commerce, with some of the small businesses that we're working with. We did an event here in the fall focused around small businesses and helping them grow. And recently we announced a partnership with SAIT around investing around education, around cybersecurity. So you can imagine cybersecurity is extremely important to all of us, but extremely important to us to protect our network as well. So that's some of the things that we're doing in Western Canada. And this is really about us ensuring that the network, the ecosystem that we're trying to power is an engine of scale for the Canadian economy. We really want to make sure that our role has evolved. And we want to bring value from being a payments provider to providing data, insights, and intelligence. And surrounding that with security and trust in the ecosystem. And that's going to be really important, especially when you think about today's digital-first economy. We're going to touch on, probably the most popular topic these days, especially in the tech world, but in everybody's lives, artificial intelligence, right? How that's impacting things. And some of you may have seen, we just released some insights from last year's Stampede, from what we call our Mastercard Economics Institute. And that's where we have a group of economists. They're centered all over the world. We have one based here in Canada as well. And we use the data both from a local and global perspective to help drive insights. We anonymize that data, and we can help businesses, cities, and governments really decode what's happening in the economy. What it shows, so maybe no surprise, right? But Stampede's not just a major cultural event, but an economic catalyst. So last year, Stampede drove roughly an 18% boost in spending in total at local merchants. So maybe no surprise, right? Like when we compare that with the baseline, so we'll do like analysis against that. Again, maybe no surprise, but restaurants, anybody, I don't know if you saw the article, but anybody take a guess? How much increase? You read the article, 29%, look at that, that was a good number. 29% increase with restaurants, right? Local retail also saw an increase as well, maybe not insignificant. The highest traffic happens, do you guys know when it happens? I know you know, because you read the article. Anybody else? Not what, but I'm actually thinking about when. Booze, I bet for sure, goes up quite a bit, right? Yesterday, Thursday, the Thursday before Stampede is when we see this massive inflection. In fact, the highest peak for retail spending. Why do you think? I'll give you a hint. Yeah, people are looking for, oh, I got to get ready, I got to get in gear. My wife and I were laughing, we're like, we feel so out of place without a hat. I'm so glad we got one. But that's what we see in the data. It's showing us that retail spending is going through the roof on the Thursday before Stampede. And when you think about that if we can have that type of insight into events like this and these triggers, it allows us to prepare a little bit better, right? How can I make sure that I've got inventory ready, not for during, but actually leading up to it? Some of these might seem obvious, but sometimes maybe not so obvious, right? Interestingly enough, we're seeing a lot of international increase in Canada as well, tied to the Stampede. Booking data suggests travel this year, so booking in hotels suggests that travel's up this year. A lot of interesting growth coming from Netherlands, Belgium, the UK, and Australia. So we've got friends from all over the world coming to Canada. We're seeing an increase from those regions. So that first takeaway that we see at least, and maybe it's obvious, right? Like moments like the Stampede create real measurable impact for the economy, right? But the second thing that we want to take away is like the value's not evenly distributed, right? So it's shaped by timing, location, and behaviors, right? So we just talked about that as well. Businesses and cities and governments that can understand these patterns, we think that they're going to be in a better position to take action. Now, the big moment that we see coming together with Stampede, it might seem like a simple example when we talk about the hats and things like that, but really how our consumers are evolving is the next thing. I touched on it earlier, right? So those decisions that they're making, I want to show up to the event, I want to look good, I want to participate, be a part of the action. That's not a surprise, but how they're going about and doing that these days, right? So traditionally we would go to the retailers and buy, but now, and again, maybe no surprise, what's the change that we saw over the last probably decade, really, is people are going online, right? So they'll go and shop in advance, do some searching, do some research, take their time to actually try to figure out where can they actually find the best deal, the best look, something that really appeals to them, whatever their reasons might be for making that purchase. But that often means opening up your phone, maybe checking a few options. Before it was with our computers. In the AI era, in the Agentic era, we call it, that's going to change things. You're going to go to an AI agent, and you're going to say, find me this. Some of you might be doing that today. Show of hands, how many are using AI? Maybe do a quick search, and look at that, right? And you do compares. People are doing comparison with it. Yeah, lots of heads nodding, hands nodding, lifting. Thank you. So that's something that we're seeing a lot more of. We're seeing, and we've done some analysis and comparing like spend data with where people are actually spending with and purchasing and subscribing to AI models, right? So we can see a pattern emerging that more and more users that at least are purchasing with on AI models are increasing. But what might that look like with Stampede when we think about in the future, right? So searching for hotel rooms, maybe an obvious one, right? That last minute trip to Stephen Avenue to go shopping, we talked about that. But imagine if you're asking that AI agent with clear parameters, find me a hotel with this location, with these parameters, from these preferred retailers. I want to be able to pick it up and make sure that it's available. So consumers are doing this because one, there's obviously a price opportunity, maybe a savings opportunity, but also just time, right? Like how much easier it is. They don't have to go searching through a whole bunch of sites, try to figure out where the best deal is. Am I getting the best deal? Let the AI go look for that for me. That's an example of agentic commerce in action. And so one of the things that we think is really important for us to consider is that there's the next wave where you'll actually have the AI go out and facilitate that purchase. But this is where trust comes in, right? How do you trust that what it's giving you is the correct information? If you're the retailer, how do you trust that that individual is actually asking for that authorized transaction? If you're the individual, how do you know that you're actually looking at a legitimate site if you're letting the AI go and look for it, right? Is my money actually safe? This is all really important, and those examples of questions are some of the things that we're building into our network. That type of data, that trust layer, we call it agent pay. So it's focused on things like authentication, right? Knowing who you are, if you really are who you are, and you're working through that bot, if you will. There's this thing called agentic tokens that help us with that. We were able to register and understand to make sure that the intent, I wanted a light colored hat, but what got into my cart was a dark colored hat and it got shipped to me. Is that actually what I wanted? Who's responsible for that? At what point? Is that the AI's fault? Is it the individual's fault? And these are things that we didn't have to worry about in the past because we were right at the helm, right? We were the ones actually making the decisions. So when you're letting those decisions be made on someone else's behalf, on your behalf, we want to make sure that the data that the merchants are going to need, that the banks are going to need, is all available to them. And that's what we've been enabling behind the scenes. So that's really important for us. The market signals are clear for us. 71% of consumers are telling us that they're looking for AI to help streamline their shopping experience, right? So almost 3/4, I expect that fully to go much higher. The shift that we're projecting is this is a $1.7 trillion market by 2030. So you want to get on board. You want to make sure you're prepared for this, right? It's why we're building those fundamentals in. It's not a distant conversation, right? It's hard to imagine. 2030 is really not that far away when we think about that. That's really the bridge to today's discussion. If the future of our digital economy will be more intelligent, more dynamic, more agentic, then businesses need more ambition to succeed. You need those insights. You need technology that helps you turn that into action, and you need that security and trust layer to ensure that consumers can act with confidence. That's where we come in. That's where Mastercard comes in, and why we bring leaders together at moments like this. We're focused on helping businesses understand what's happening in the economy to help give the confidence to act. Because across every role in this room, the core question is the same. How do you make the right decisions today to prepare for what's next? We believe the right insights, strong partnerships, trusted infrastructure can help you answer that, and that's why we're here to explore together. As AI becomes more and more embedded in how decisions are made, and increasingly how transactions are executed, the question of how businesses adapt becomes really real. That's exactly what we're seeing across Canada in the economy right now. Demand is shifting, technology is evolving quicker than ever, and organizations are under a lot of pressure to respond with speed and confidence. At Mastercard, we look through the lens of commerce, how the economy is moving in real time, what signals businesses need to act, and how trusted information, infrastructure, insights, and partnerships can turn that complexity into opportunity. So, what we're going to explore next is with our esteemed panelists. I'm thrilled to be joined by Anne Butler, the Managing Director of Payments and Regulatory Oversight with the Bank of Canada. Come on up, Anne. Welcome. Ruhee Ismail-Teja, the Vice President of Policy and External Affairs with the Calgary Chamber. And the man who kicked us off, Phil Burns, the founder of Tech Thursday. Awesome. Thank you so much. So, to start, I'd love a quick perspective from each of you. What do you think is changing most meaningfully in the economy right now? And what should business leaders be paying closest attention to? Let me start with you, Anne.
Yeah, so first I have to. Oh, good. I don't have my glasses on, so I was worried I wouldn't get the on button. Very intimidated to follow the panel. That just be the first speaker after that great conversation. We've heard a lot from your introduction, from the conversation that we just had about this very pivotal time that we're in, and the amount of dynamic change that our economy is going through. And so if I think about it from the Bank of Canada's perspective and my unique perspective there, running the sort of regulatory arm of the bank, there's a profound amount of change happening in the technology that underpins the things that we do in our economy. And we heard about some of that today with agentic commerce that scares the crap out of me. That there's new technologies that are being explored and innovated and giving great experiences to consumers in payments across the country and around the world. We have people are exploring stablecoin. There's tokenization of deposits, tokenization of assets. There's agentic commerce, as we talked about. There's faster payments coming to the country at the end of the year. And so these are all great and exciting changes and innovation for the way we move money around, and that supports our economy, and that's really exciting. It's really important as that's happening, though, that we understand the risks, right? What does that mean as money moves faster? As money moves now in new kinds of ways, there's new ways to pay for things, there's new ways to go shopping. And all of that is happening very, very quickly in a space that's very complex. And so thinking about it as a regulator or policymaker, it's really important to understand and set up the right guardrails. So do we have in place the types of requirements for participants that are engaging in the movement of money in our country to make it safe for Canadians and individual Canadians and businesses to participate and take advantage of all that innovative opportunity? And also for the participants to understand the risks that they're engaging in or need to manage for their customers so that they can be confident that that what they instructed their provider to do is going to happen. They're going to get that thing that they ordered that's going to get delivered to their doorstep tomorrow by 10 a.m. Those are really important. So what's sort of keeping me busy in my day job is actually building those regulatory guardrails, right? With new legislation that's come in. We've got retail payments providers are now being regulated. We're in basically a startup year ourselves of running that regulatory system. And we're busy working on the latest one launched last Friday. You will have seen consumer-driven banking regulation drafts coming out about getting consumers control of their data, being able to give permission access in a controlled and safe environment. Really important new framework for the country for innovation. And soon to come, stablecoin regulation as well. So a lot of change coming.
Lots of exciting stuff. Phil, from your perspective as someone who has worked in the payments industry and as someone who has conversations every day in the tech community.
Yeah, for sure. I think, so Tech Thursday, we host largely weekly panels across the country and end up speaking with a lot of tech entrepreneurs on what's going on. And I think there's probably three big changes that we're seeing, at least in the tech space. I think the first one is maybe the increasing importance of entrepreneurship as a skill. I think now everyone at a company, we just had a panel with Wealthsimple as an example. Everyone at Wealthsimple is expected to be a data analyst, right? Like if you're collecting information from a user, you're expected to be able to like understand what's happening with it, push for changes, and maybe even come with, hey, I really think this is what the company should be angling towards or focusing on. And so entrepreneurship is both becoming a really important skill in like within companies, but also if you're starting a new company, very relevant. I think the second one, very similar, is starting to see smaller teams. I think entrepreneurs are able to go a lot further with much smaller teams. There's a lot of examples of folks in the room who are doing exactly that, of building really remarkable companies on 2, 3, 4 employees who are just able to do more. And you see that also on the enterprise side as well, where I think companies that maybe scaled up too much are starting to pull back on how many employees that they have, because they're realizing we really don't need that many employees. 4 of us can lead a department or something like that. And so you've seen examples of that across the U.S. and some companies across Canada doing fairly large layoffs in that sense. And then maybe the third one is sort of this emerging, I think, K-shaped economy where those who are embracing AI, I think, are doing better, or maybe we'll start to see that they do better long term, and those who don't might start to fall behind. And this K-shaped economy is starting to see trends across the U.S. and Canada.
It's interesting. At IBM, we used to have this saying, you shouldn't be worried about AI taking your job. You should be worried about someone using AI taking your job, right? It's more about them being that much more empowered and capable as a result. It's a great point. Yeah. Small businesses can do a lot more than maybe before. And some companies actually are able to redirect. So again, speaking from history myself, where we invested in more staff, it actually grew the company. However, AI was being used and replacing certain roles, but it allowed the company to actually invest more people overall for more customer-facing roles, which in the end was helping grow the business. So, Ruhee, from the Calgary business perspective, I'd love to hear what you're seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things that we're seeing is more uncertainty broadly. And so when we think about the economy and what businesses are up against, it's a whole new set of challenges that is increasingly complex as we go. And so it's, of course, trade relationships and how fundamentally those have shifted in a really short period of time. It's also how quickly the economy yo-yos with that. And so that means a lot of uncertainty around consumer demand, which spurs uncertainty around how businesses should invest for the long term. And we're also continuing to see things like supply chain disruptions. And so for retailers, while things have gotten better on the supply chain side, that still adds a lot of uncertainty for businesses around whether we have the infrastructure in place to be able to deliver on a lot of big commitments. And that, of course, impacts growth. And of course, technology is a massive part of the uncertainty as well. And so thinking about where technology is headed, whether businesses are going to be in a position to embrace that technology. And one of the things that we find most interesting is that optimism is actually up. And so when we looked at the data last quarter, we saw that the level of challenges that businesses are facing is basically up across the board, but so is optimism. And so we dug into that story a little bit more and found that businesses are more interested in, more optimistic about their ability to take on those big challenges. I think technology has a really important role to play on that side as well. Some of it is around using data and leaning on technology and data like the Mastercard Economic Insights work to be able to unpack that level of uncertainty and get ahead of it for businesses. Some of it is absolutely around labor and the extent to which businesses can scale up or scale down their operations and be able to take a little bit more risk that doesn't lock them into long-term trends. And then thinking about technology as helping us see around the corner more broadly and share data and resources so that businesses can make informed decisions.
That's a very good insight. I want to build on what you just touched on, right? So we just touched on the stuff I was talking about earlier. The Mastercard Economics Institute shows that Stampede demand builds in waves, right? We see like that retail spend picking up just beforehand, the hotels, accommodation bookings, we see that demand increasing, just building up over time. And of course, the restaurants, having an elevated, experience that during the course of the actual event. But from a Calgary business perspective, Ruhee, I'd be curious to know, what does that tell us? Like, how do businesses need to prepare? Where do they sometimes get it wrong?
It's a great question, and the demand spike that we see is so interesting. And part of what we see is that volatile demand. And so Stampede is one of those where we are able to anticipate it, but there's a lot of cases where we're actually not able to anticipate it. And when we look at adoption broadly, 30% of businesses are adopting AI right now. And when we look at small businesses, that number drops to about 8%. Oh. And so a massive gap in, again, to sort of the K-shaped, many businesses are starting to make progress towards it, but a lot are not. And so I think the Stampede, I'm one of the Calgarians up here, so have to brag about Calgary, but I don't know that businesses are getting it wrong at all. But I do think there's opportunity that we're leaving on the table. Mm-hmm. And some of that is around data and the data sharing. And so the Stampede, for example, doesn't set targets on how many visitors will come because there's so many things that change at the state of the economy, whether a lot of those pieces impact what consumer demand looks like the week of. And so that makes it really difficult for businesses to be able to plan, and particularly when you talk about restaurants being one of the highest sectors that sees an increase during this time. Perishable food is a massive challenge to be able to plan for. But there is data out there that helps tell us things. And so things like Thursday evening spending and whether that's higher this year or previous years, things like hotel bookings. And so I think there's a real opportunity for us to think about what that data sharing looks like in real time so that being able to use tools like AI, we're actually getting quality insights back from whatever we put in because we've got the quality data to be able to make informed decisions.
That's great insight. So Stampede, we talked about this, is not only a cultural and recreational highlight, but also a moment that showcases Calgary's energy, entrepreneurial spirit in the business community. Phil, what does Stampede reveal about Calgary and Alberta's broader growth strategy? And maybe two-parter here as well. What does it signal about where the biggest opportunities are in a more digital economy?
Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about Stampede all day long. This is great. As I mentioned before, I love cosplaying as a cowboy, which is awesome. I think it's a really great question. I read this book. It was written by someone named John Whitaker. Some of you guys might know him if you guys have worked in government for a long enough time. But the book is called, it's a biography on George Lane, one of the founders of the Calgary Stampede, but famous rancher. And I think where I'm going with this is, I think Calgary, I'm from Winnipeg, and so have just discovered kind of the culture of, from Winnipeg, moved here 5 years ago. Calgary has a really remarkable business culture. And I think people often associate it with the discovery of oil and sort of building out of the oil sands. But what struck me from this book is how much George Lane and the folks who pioneered Alberta, how much risk they took on by driving, thousands of heads of cattle to Calgary with the wild winters and being attacked by wolves and for some reason thinking, hey, this land is worth doing it for and worth staying here and seeing what happens. And so I think those early days of ranching really created a really strong culture here in Calgary and an entrepreneurial culture. And then we, discovered the oil patch, and still that culture of innovation and that business culture remained. And I would say maybe our third horizon now is kind of the tech and innovation space, where Calgary is a really addicting place to build, I think, and a lot of entrepreneurs feel that. And I think it's because people are so friendly, so willing to help out, but also because of that oil expertise that we have. I took a tour of a company on Tuesday, actually, called Geologic AI. And they do a core, they sort of do drilling, and then they analyze the drilling in the core to understand what minerals are in there, where should they drill. They make mine sites much more efficient. Mm-hmm. Copper mines right now, I think we have a 400,000 ton shortage of copper annually in terms of our supply, and it takes 17 years for a copper mine to get online. These guys are at the very least removing 3 years from that timeline and hoping to do more. But he is obsessed with building in Calgary, and the reason he is because of how much knowledge they have around the oil patch and that expertise. So I think the question is around, what does the Stampede sort of show us about the tech and innovation space in Calgary and the future growth? Well, I think it's a nod a bit to the past of how many folks have really desperately wanted to build incredible companies here in Calgary, and how that's kind of being carried forward. And every sort of iteration from our past, I think, is still here today.
That's really interesting.
Can I just jump in on that
Please,
as well?
yeah.
I think one of the other pieces when we think about Stampede is how little all of us are on our technology through the week. And so I think Stampede is a really interesting juxtaposition of how technology is dramatically changing the game, but there's also no replacement for relationships. Yeah. And so just being able to connect with people and the way that is so fundamentally important to business and will not change regardless of technology advancements is also a really interesting thing to note.
Yeah, I attended an event that Edmonton was putting on yesterday, and someone that I bumped into that I knew, he said the number of deals that get done this week, at Stampede, it's remarkable, because it is just about that. It's about relationships. So as much as digital is advancing, I think that human relationships really matter, right? So it's important. It's great.
I think people are also more willing to make deals when they're in cowboy boots.
Might have to do a couple drinks too, but yeah.
There really is a very different vibe. I was talking with a few folks before about that, right? There's within the financial services sector, right? I haven't spent a ton of time in Calgary, but there is when you're here, but also when Calgarians are elsewhere and talking about their businesses, there's an energy, and it's really, really inspirational.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's great. Actually, Anna, as more commerce becomes digital and eventually more AI-enabled, the underlying infrastructure becomes even more important. So I'm curious, what should business leaders understand practically, and how trusted about how trusted, resilient payment systems enable growth and confidence across the economy.
I feel like you're asking me to bring the vibe down now, right? So I'm like, oh, let's talk about payment systems.
I'm an engineer. I like
would,
tech. It's like, yeah.
I would, sort of step back for a second and just think about, like, the Bank of Canada has talked a lot about the need to really, step up the innovation in the country to make it possible for innovators to be investing in new technologies, to be scaling their businesses, to be able to find new markets. And I think that's a really important sort of anchor to keep in mind as you're thinking about the businesses that you're developing, but also the importance of infrastructure to support that. And when we talk about, so the connection with payment systems is, it's not just the technology that we happen to use to do these like amazing things that Mastercard provides to their customers, for instance, and others, but it's actually like literally the economic infrastructure of the country. That's how money is moved around. And it's moved around in different layers and different networks. But ultimately, this is how businesses are making money and people are acquiring services, acquiring things, building houses, all those things. It all goes through these rails in some way. So, I've only been at the Bank of Canada for just over a year. I started in June of last year, having been in the private sector mostly before that. My first day, I will never forget, because one of my team members brought me a giant, bright blue plumber's wrench and plunked it down on my desk and said, "This is to remind you that you are in charge of the safety of the plumbing of the financial system of Canada." And it literally is still right there on my desk every day, because it is literally, it's a very weighty reminder of how important that is. And so, the role of my team in terms of overseeing and supervising that, or in fact building new guardrails, and I guess I should be using some kind of a plumbing metaphor to keep building on that, is really, really important. When I talked to my team member, I was like, I'm not sure what I can do with this except beat up my computer when I'm mad at it, because it's not going to help with the payment system. But the analogy works for me in this way, because these things are all interconnected, right? And so just like your plumbing, if there's a leak or a block or something's going very bad in those pipes, both ends are going to be impacted. So the customer and the business and somebody down the trail. So my team's job is around being able to see the big picture of how all of that comes together. And so some of the regulatory things that we have built and are building are around giving that sort of line of sight to the perimeter around what the risks are and how we make sure we have it safe. Because what we need is to have the money moving through the system, right? And so we need to know when there's a problem. We need to try to prevent problems before they happen. You've talked some great examples in the introductions around how to protect, this theme of trust, right? Mm-hmm. Trust is really, really important. And so the frameworks around what does it take to have reliable systems so that your customer knows, your business customer knows that they can trust you to be able to provide that service. And then things will go wrong. So what are the processes that will quickly fix a problem so it doesn't become a problem? And we heard some great numbers today from the data from Mastercard on the news this morning. I think I was told it was $400 million coming into the Calgary economy in Stampede last year, and then it's expected to be bigger this year. That's a lot of value. This weekend, Canada's playing Morocco on Saturday, all right? So pubs across the country, I assume, are going to be very packed full of people who are eating and drinking and cheering. Imagine if in Stampede or in the pubs on Saturday, there's a massive failure in the payment system, whether that's because somebody's point of sale devices, in major cities, in Calgary during this time period or in major cities isn't working. That might be the cause, or it might be the cause that there's a problem somewhere deeper in the payment system, in the core payment system, in the network on top. Doesn't really matter for the business, right? The small business or big business that was going to have a great revenue day, or for the consumer who just had a really lousy customer experience. And so our job as an overseer and supervisor is to try to give take the framework and give guidance and work with regulated entities like Mastercard, who's one of our overseen entities, to try to prevent, if we can, and react to prevent that kind of catastrophic bad day at the Stampede, right? And so that's really part of the sort of mission of making sure our economy is going to be running. And so then for businesses that are in the business of payments, right? It's really important to understand that trust. We heard trust. Every speaker has talked about trust. Trust is a precious commodity for the running of these systems. That when you hand money, when you hand Canadian dollars when you're handed that money by your customer, they are trusting you to get that done. And so having that knowledge of what you need to do to be able to connect to the systems and make this place a safe place to move money is really critical. And so it's exciting. I mean, it's part of why I'm at the Bank of Canada. That opportunity to help build and keep expanding that trust is really exciting. And it's really important for us to build as an economy. So that is, I think, one of the critical things for us to keep an eye on, and thinking about cybersecurity, like it is a number one laser focus for us on operational risk management, cybersecurity. The big players in this business have very, very sophisticated processes for this, and we're on top of it, know what they're doing all the time, right? So this is a really important part of the work that needs to be done to make sure Canada's economy can be running.
Yeah, it's truly critical infrastructure, right? Okay, so lightning round to wrap things up. If business leaders in the room take one thing away from the conversation, what's one practical step they should take now to prepare for Canada's future economy? Anne.
I guess I've sort of hammered home the theme around trust, but I would say like for the work you do with the Bank of Canada if you're in the payments business, it's not a compliance exercise. It's actually the business that we're in, and so understanding that this is what we're trying to help all the players understand is this is what we need to do to have a vibrant economy.
Right, Ruhee?
I think from a business perspective, I'm most concerned about how low the level of adoption on AI is. And so my advice would be to just try it and pick one or two things that are measurable. You can see the impact of them. You can implement them into your business for relatively low cost and then be able to look back and see the impact. And to think critically about what is going to make a difference and match where your business is at. And so I think a lot of businesses think about AI as sort of bigger than something they're prepared to take on. And so to think about it in a bite-sized way, where for a small retailer, for example, it's not about using AI necessarily to look at the supply chain disruptions and be able to do a whole bunch of complicated analysis on what that's going to mean. It might be as simple as figuring out how you schedule people more effectively so that you are able to support employees. And so I think being really creative and just giving it a shot. And I'll go back to what you said around AI is not going to take your job, but somebody who knows how to use it might. And so I think very similarly from a business perspective, there's a lot of opportunity that is being left on the table. And if we just try it and embrace Calgary's entrepreneurial spirit and willingness to give things a go, we'll get pretty far.
Phil.
Yeah, I mean, kind of following on that, once we get back outside, we have a big sort of wall, and it's a predictions wall. So you guys can scan a QR code, write where you think Canada's digital economy is going to be in 2030. And I bring this up not only to plug it because I want you guys to use it, but also because our designer built it in 10 minutes and was literally like, hey, can we have this wall? And she spun it up with Claude Code and made it. And it's to also illustrate a point that, like, yes, someone who's using AI will take your job. In this case, in the past, that would have taken like 2 or 3 engineers, maybe a full day to build, but literally takes now 15 minutes and a designer with no coding experience to do this. And so just the cost and time of building software has decreased so significantly that as a business leader in the room, like that's one example, but you have to start looking at what are your other moats. And so whether that's a supply chain moat, there's so many other moats, but I think the most interesting one is distribution, right? How are you getting your product in front of customers? How are folks hearing about you, starting to use you? How are they falling in love with you? But also like agentic commerce means so many interesting things as well, right? Like how are AI agents learning about you and comparing your price against other people's price, and like that's going to be really wild too. So things to think about there. But that I would also think about. AI agents is also kind of distribution as well. So
That's great.
Benjamin, can I just pick up on one thing before?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I literally, I loved what you said about the wall outside. I'm going to go out and look at it. So I literally have no training on how to use this wrench that I have on my desk. I wouldn't know what to do with it. I also have no training on coding, but I have used Claude to build myself a little engine that goes out and scans the internet for all of the nefarious things I might want to know about around people that are in the payments business. I did that myself with absolutely zero training and like not very much time. So it's a pretty amazing.
That's
right?
awesome. Yeah. I do want to see this wrench.
you could not learn how to use that wrench that quickly.
All right, with that, I want to say thank you to all three of you. Thank you for coming. Yeah. And to the audience, I hope you had some good insights from this conversation. We are going to be reopening some food and drinks and entertainment, and also the hat bar will be back open. So, and check out the wall; it's really cool. So, thank you.
Yeah.
All right.